Hello, I'm Matthew, 3-time Magic champion living in Cambridge, and today I'm talking about the 5 pieces of golden advice that have helped me strive toward magical excellence, and hopefully there'll be some gems of advice in there for you too. Number 1 is be yourself. I heard this over and over again as a young magician. Be yourself. Just be yourself. What does that even mean? For somebody that's between the ages of 12 and 18, for me, I didn't know what that really meant. It sounded like good advice, it sounded normal, like try not to be somebody else, try and be yourself, that makes sense. It's not until now that I realised that that advice was actually really good advice, but terrible advice for the person that I was. Because as a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old or even an 18-year-old, I didn't know who I was. Like, I was beginning to understand who I was, but I didn't really know deep down who I was. Do I even know who I am now? I'm getting a bit closer to it, I think. I'm going into a bit of an existential crisis during this video. You know, as I've gotten older, I've understood myself better and better. And I think when you're so young, to give advice such as be yourself, it's very difficult to kind of comprehend and understand what that even means. So with that in mind, what would I say to my 12-year-old self with this advice in mind? Be yourself. Okay, I would say share the stories that you have from school. Tell us stories about your friends or going out on your bike or the way you look at the world, you know, the pain of homework and being told what to do, or, you know, get home time, or having a teacher that's really annoying at school, or having friends that are really fun. Tell those stories and give adults an insight into your world and what that's like. I think that's the only way I could really share that kind of advice to my 12-year-old self, just by saying basically share your world with everyone else, and that way you're sharing your inner self with the world. So you're being yourself, you're sharing yourself. So that's the first one, be yourself. Number 2, a good magic effect can be easily described in one sentence. The way I've used this advice is by looking at my routines and seeing how I can cut the fat away and make them streamlined and make them more punchy. This rule can be broken, but as a rule, if I can describe this routine in one sentence, then an audience should be able to describe it in one sentence. Therefore, it's a strong piece of magic. What's happening is clear to an audience. The time it can be broken is where the magician puts thought and energy into the build-up to that payoff in that routine. So there might be a routine where there are 3 magic moments and lots of things happening in between. But as long as the magician illustrates the 1, 2, 3 moments in that routine, then the audience can go away and they can say, well, the orange vanished, then it appeared inside my hat, and then I chose a card, and the card appeared inside the orange, and then the card vanished with the orange and appeared underneath a glass that had been on the table the whole time. That's a routine which I've just made up, which sounds very clear. 3 clear moments happen. In between those moments of magic, there might be other small subtleties or other things happening. But as long as the audience have a clear understanding of what happened and they can articulate that, then they can pass that story on to somebody else, and that person can easily think and visualize and imagine what that magic must have been like to experience. That's when you know you've got a really strong piece of magic. So if you start looking at your repertoire like that, then I guarantee your magic will just get supercharged and be super strong. If, however, there are too many complicated moments in there, and then the card changes colour, and then it's the only odd one in that pack, and then the red cards turn into black cards, you know, if there's just too many things that happen and there's no key or core magic moment, sort of a major lift in the magical performance, then unfortunately the routine isn't going to be particularly strong. There are a few exceptions to this rule, but as a rule, it's there to be kind of used as a guide. And so look at your magic routines and see if you can describe them in one sentence. And if you can't, then it's probably time to cut it out or change the routine. Number 3, it's not what you do, but how you do it. The easiest way to illustrate this is to picture 2 people side by side. Person A can read, and he reads a book word for word, out loud. Person B, he can also read, but he embodies the words and he tells the story using his voice and his energy, articulating every single word to highlight the drama. And hopefully that's a small illustration of what I mean when there's the difference between reading and telling a story. It's the difference between, you know, experiencing someone doing something. They can both read, but one of them's turning it into an experience which is memorable, special, and feels exciting. And that's really what I want to try and get across here with applying this to magic. Is anybody can do a trick, And I think the issue with this is a trick in itself is an impressive thing or exciting thing to experience, but it's up to the magician to emphasize the impossibility of this and wrap this up into an enchanting experience which people can go away with. Rather than just somebody doing a string of tricks, it's an experience which embodies that person. It's the difference between a trickster and a magician. A trickster does tricks, a magician does magic. It's kind of the difference between doing something, reading, and being something, a storyteller. That's what I want to try and get across with this piece of advice. That's how I interpret this, and I think about this a lot. And I'm trying to apply this still now. It's still an ongoing process of trying to turn pieces of magic into magical experiences rather than just tricks. Number 4, learn 8 tricks and learn to do them well. It's not just knowing tricks, knowing how they are done and being able to just do a trick. It kind of relates to the previous point. It's about knowing that trick really, really well and intimately. Now there is a caveat to this, and that is when I was younger, it was all about learning as many tricks as possible and as many difficult sleights. The more challenging, the better. And this definitely helped expand my knowledge of magic and methods and all that good stuff, which has come in really useful later on down the line. But there comes a tipping point in magic where you've learned all of the kind of fun technical stuff, but if you want to be a magician, then you need to focus on a small number of tricks or routines that you're going to know inside out and that you've applied thought to, you've applied a script to it, there's a narrative, there's something happening, you know the moments inside out, you know what people are going to say as you're performing them, so you can say something back and be witty and be quick. It's all of these things which lie underneath the trick itself, which creates that into a showpiece. So what I'm really trying to get at here, and what I think this piece of advice is alluding to, is know 8 tricks, but make them showpieces, make them your own and make them really special, not just a trick that you can do. So think about the scripting, think about how you're delivering this piece of magic and injecting some of yourself, which comes back to the first point, being yourself. And number 5, the biggest piece of advice is to never reveal the secrets. Now this might seem obvious, but magic is this carefully constructed tower of cards which happens inside somebody else's mind. As you perform a trick, they're making assumptions of what their reality is and their perceptions of everything until you get to this top 2 cards, and then the magic moment happens. And there's this fragile tower of an experience which is happening in their mind, which you've created through performing a piece of magic. That's special, that's an experience, and that's something that they can look back on and look over again and again, and they can share that with somebody else, like a piece of art in their own mind. If at the end of that, you construct this beautiful thing, and then at the end you say, oh, by the way, it was all done using this rubber band, then this house of cards comes tumbling down. It was almost like everything you just did was completely pointless. You've stolen something beautiful away from somebody. And magic is one of the most special things you can give to anybody. It's a unique experience that people can't get anywhere else. And that's special. So keep the secrets to yourself. So those are 5 golden pieces of advice for any magician. I'd love to know what advice you would tell your younger self if you had the opportunity, and if you like this video you might want to check out this one about why magicians keep secrets. Until next time, in a bit.